see you in Ellen. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks again, Amey, for joining us at the auditorium and Illusorr in pilot. And we're super excited for this talk. And the reason we invited you to speak at the pilot is we've seen in the past couple of years you're creating magnificent type designs, experimenting with some kind of softwares, 3D softwares, and publishing them on your social media. And in a short amount of time, like in 1 year, 2 years, you got a substantial, you got a good fame on social media because of your unique designs publishing on social media. So yeah, and recently projects has been published on Instagram's page as well, which was so cool, and I congratulate you. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. I just want to first of all ask, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, your talk to the audience about yourself who don't know about you, and give us a little bit of your background and history.
Yes, definitely. Hi, hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me here. Thank you, Hamid. Thank you, Faisal. And I'm very happy to be here to interact with everyone. My name is Amey Kandalgaonkar. I'm originally from Mumbai, India. And I have lived and worked in many places, in Shanghai, in London, Mumbai, and now I'm living and working in Vancouver for past 1.5 years. As Hamid mentioned, a couple of years ago I started my Instagram page, and it was basically a way of having fun, really. I just wanted to explore design, and the purpose was to just start a design blog. I was not expecting such positive response. I think I was very lucky probably to be in the right place at the right time. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for this brief introduction. I want to ask you, you're creating some kind of, your designs have some kind of a unique language. Like I've seen you published like 3D concept proposals, mostly out of concrete, hard concrete, and with these undulating walls or these surfaces going into each other. Can you tell us where does this idea of your design and your philosophy of design come from, and what is the style? I don't want to say style. What is the principles that you are following in your designs?
Right. So I don't like to stick to a style. I think my work has evolved since beginning, like over the past 2 years, and I am experimenting with different styles. Initially, it was very much interpretation of brutalism, and recently I'm working more with organic shapes. It need not be organic though. In few months' time, I might be experimenting with some other things. So my biggest source of inspiration is the architects Herzog and de Meuron. When I look at their work, they experiment with different styles in every project. You cannot look at their project and say, hey, this is typical Herzog. No, which you can say about Zaha Hadid, for example. So I like that approach to design, that every project is unique, and its design has to be connected to that place and belonging to that time and context. So I like that way of designing, and of course I'm still learning. Okay, I don't think I'm doing justice to this what I said, but yeah, I hope to get there one day, and that's the major philosophy behind my thinking. That okay, I use concrete because I find it easier to work with. That's the honest answer. Because I'm trying to do these projects like one project in a week, and you want to minimize the amount of decisions that you make. So sticking to concrete does simplify a lot of things. It's already a lot of work, So I wanna take some shortcuts. Yeah, that's all.
So Amey, last time we spoke, you kind of were taking interest in virtual reality and sort of exploring virtual reality, and because
Yes.
your designs are sort of very explorative, they're not made to be built in the real world. They're kind of like visualizations and explorations of the potentials of architecture. So it makes it very sort of I guess appropriate to bring them into the virtual world. So I wanted to ask if you've sort of experimented with that and how you found that transformation.
Well, I have not brought them directly into virtual reality, but I like to look at Instagram as a virtual platform. It's 2D. It's not 3D, but it is a kind of a virtual platform where we all come together and share these images and experience them. But sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know if you've started experimenting with virtual reality, bringing your designs into virtual reality. I do agree that Instagram is a virtual platform because, we all kind of, whenever we're looking at our screens or typing to each other, I think
Yes.
not even just Instagram, but the internet itself kind of brings us all together in this virtual realm that we don't really see, but we connect with each other.
Correct.
But in terms of sort of the traditional virtual reality, like, Illusorr or Sensor,
Yes.
I wanted to know if you've sort of experimented with your designs on platforms like this.
No, I have not.
Would you be interested to?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I have thought of that, and I have also thought of the challenges in, how do you bring work into such platforms? And I think the biggest challenge is the purpose of those spaces. I don't think you can just build those spaces and people will come. I think it has to be a combination of spatial and gaming experience where people have to address a set of challenges to be engaged
Yeah,
into that space.
That's interesting because, we also kind of face this when designing Illusorr, sort of inputting gamification into the design.
Yes.
And it's interesting that, like, for it to be sort of for it to be
to work, right? For it to
experience,
success. Yeah.
right, it has to have some sort of is that because reality itself is also gamified in a way, or is that because in order to bring people out of reality, it has to be challenging?
Yes, exactly. I think it has to be a form of escapism. I think if we just make VR a reflection of reality, I think people will lose interest quickly. It has to be like, I don't know if people have played this game called Half-Life Alyx. It is one of the best virtual reality games out there. And the reason it is so engaging because you are tackling a set of challenges, and it's an experience that you will not find in real world. So that is, I think, the key behind its success. That and also, like, if we look at the movies, Inception or Matrix, they are about the challenges that you face in the virtual world or the dream world, and that's what makes them engaging. So I think you cannot really create a virtual bar and people will not come there, to have drinks. It needs to be a lot more than that. I think people will prefer to go to an actual bar instead.
Right. Just to give a little pushback on that, what if, because I do agree with the current virtual reality that we have, absolutely, you'd have to have some sort of gamification and to sort of to make people interested in it. But what happens when we get to a stage where virtual reality is almost as real as physical reality? When you have, we've been speaking about Neuralink a lot in these talks. So when you have the Neuralink chip, able to simulate taste and smell and touch and all these
Yes.
different, perceptions, what happens then? Would you still need gamification, or, would people kind of love this world even more than the physical?
Yeah, I think that state is called hyperreal, right? That, the state where you can no longer differentiate between the real and the simulation. Yeah, I think I was listening to the earlier panel discussion, and I think over there also some people said that, people might not be spending the entire time in the virtual world. I think there will be this, people would like to disconnect from it time to time, because I think it will be just too much to handle. So even though like it will be a very compelling place to be, I think, people will still prefer, going to the bed in the real world.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Hamid, do you have a question? I wanna change topics a little bit. Hamid?
Do you hear me? Sorry, my microphone was off.
Yeah,
We can. What do you think about the impact of social media, especially on Instagram, on powering up the designers like you, like yourself, to showcase their amazing works and also bringing up them into another level? What do you think about social media helping architects to what do you call, to show their works to almost the world? Before, it was actually literally impossible for any architect to show just his concept to the world. You needed to be a very famous architect, or your project should be built one. But now, but now with any piece of content publishing on social media, one piece of content could bring you a fame and notoriety that you wouldn't have, or any other architect 100 years ago or 50 years ago they didn't have. So what do you think on the impact of social media on architecture generally for architects?
Yeah, I think it has been extremely beneficial to me. It's a very weird platform actually, because you experience it with this tiny smartphone window, and you are trying to convey an architectural experience which is actually a physical experience you're trying to convey it through this 2D window. So it does have its limitations, and it does affect the way I design, because as an image creator, I'm not only competing with other architects, I'm also competing with other photographers, other CGI artists, and other image creators. And Instagram is a brutal place where if your image is not interesting enough, people are going to move on quickly. So you get maximum 4 to 5 seconds to convey your message. So it's a challenge in itself that you end up creating concepts that are eye-catching. I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? It's not a place really where you can explore design for the real world. You have to make them a little bit ridiculous, to put it honestly, so that people are, attracted to them. And I find that as a weakness. I cannot do enough justice to the design. I have to kind of make it superficial so that people are attracted to it. Whereas I would actually like to go in depths of it, but it's very difficult to convey those experiences on Instagram. So I think there is this weird relationship between Instagram and architecture that it kind of conveys only a part of the message and not the whole. So but yes, it has definitely helped in bringing attention in a short term, which was not, as you mentioned, which was not available 50 years ago. So but I still feel that my for me the larger goal is to build architecture, and I don't know if this Instagram journey is going to take me there or not. I hope it does, but I don't know. I hope it answers your question.
Awesome. I definitely agree with you. 40 to 50 years ago, for people like Zaha and Daniel Lipskin and Frank Gehry to get popular, they had to be in the MoMA exhibition, of the late 80s. So I definitely agree that social media has sort of given a platform for everyone to sort of showcase their works. But I want to change topics a little bit. I want to talk about you're a professional photographer as well, on top of doing design and architecture. So I wanted to talk about
Yes.
the sort of relationship between photography and virtual reality, because essentially virtual reality is an extension of photography, right? It is another medium of visualizing reality. So I wanted to get your insight as a photographer. You obviously see the world a lot more potent than the rest of us. So how do you see virtual reality sort of helping or enhancing photography now or in the future?
Yeah, I definitely don't see virtual reality replacing photography. I think there will be a more hybrid relationship between the two. So let me give you an example, or like let me put two options in front of you. That okay, like let's imagine one option where there is this detailed 3D model of a moon surface, and it's completely virtual. Okay, and I give you a set of VR gear, and you can go inside and you can explore it the way you want. The option two is that there is a probe actually landed on the lunar surface, and it has cameras attached to it, so it can take photos and videos. And you sitting in your living room on the Earth, where we are goggles, and control that robot, and interact with the lunar surface. And I think a lot of people will agree that the second option is a lot more compelling than the first one, because you are actually interacting with the lunar surface. So I see this as this hybrid between photography and VR. Do you know what you get what I'm saying?
No. What is that? Can you please explain?
Uh, so you mentioned like how photography, how like what the relationship will be between photography and VR, correct? So I see that like the photography will always become hybrid of VR. It will always be this supporting aspect of VR. So I think in future we will see that at famous tourist destinations there will be these drones fitted with cameras, and people can experience those tourist destinations via those drones, sitting at their home on the other side of the planet. So I see this continuous effort between photography and VR.
Right. Awesome. So
Oh, yeah, go on.
no, go ahead, Ahmed. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go on. I was just going to change the topic. Just ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask, how realistic do you see VR becoming in the future?
Uh, I think it will become like hyper real. I think we already talked about it before that there will be a stage where we cannot distinguish between reality and the simulation of reality, and it has a potential to become a primary world for many people. Not all, but many people would like to spend the most of their time in virtual reality.
I guess a follow-up question to that would be then, do you think there are any experiences or anything in general that we cannot replicate in virtual reality?
Depends on how good the virtual reality hardware is. If they can really create good haptic feedback suits, I think then there is nothing that, cannot be experienced in VR world. Yeah, Faisal.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hamid, you had a question?
Yeah. Talking about the softwares that you design with, how do you think the software is helping you in showcasing your design, or is software changing your design or affecting your design? Because sometimes I see designers, or this happens mostly with the young or young students or young graduate architects, that I see they do some certain kind of designs because the softwares give them capabilities to design, and
Yes.
without having some kind of like any philosophy or any kind of contextual approach to the design. So how do you think the software affects your design, and the possibilities, the capabilities that the software gives you is changing the way you think about architecture?
Correct. Well, I like to treat software as a pencil. I don't want it to guide the design. I want to be in the control of design. And I think that's just my comfort with the software, or like that's how I find comfortable designing. Some people like it other way around, they want software to generate the possibilities and then they select the possibility they like. So yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, like a lot of students, they are just sitting in front of softwares and playing with the parameters and seeing the outcomes. But yeah, I myself don't subscribe to that way of designing. I think I like to be in control of things, when designing.
Yeah, which softwares normally you use for your designs?
I'm using Cinema 4D, and then there are some plugins in Cinema 4D. So Cinema 4D, the reason I started using it because I was kind of getting stuck with Rhino. I felt that Rhino was not very good at visualization, and whereas Cinema 4D was a parametric software, and also I was able to do good visualizations, and I was also able to do a lot of good hard modeling, which was a weakness for Rhino. So, I think Cinema 4D for me was a good nexus of all these things.
And you also do the visualization inside Cinema 4D?
Yes, I use this another plugin called Octane Render. So that is the render engine I use inside Cinema 4D.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, actually, I am in the process of making a tutorial course for Cinema 4D because there is a lot of curiosity. People are reaching out every day. Hey, we want to learn Cinema 4D. Can you teach us? So I am in the process of making a tutorial series.
That would be amazing, actually, because normally architects are attached. 3D designer architects are attached more with 3ds Max, Rhino, Maya. These kind of software, or Revit, but using Cinema 4D for architecture. Not all of them are using. Some of them are using, but not all of them are using.
Yes.
That would be cool to have some architects teaching
Yeah.
Cinema 4D.
I think it will open up a lot of possibilities. It also has plugins for Houdini. It has its own particle systems, so you can do a lot of cool stuff inside Cinema 4D. I myself think I hardly know like 20-25%. There is a lot to explore.
Absolutely. Faisal, do we have any questions from the audience or Discord?
Not yet, but if anyone has any questions, please do either write them in the chat or you can come to the stage and ask them. Do feel free to engage. Would love to take some questions. But yeah, I wanted to agree with what Amey was saying earlier about sort of treating these softwares as a pencil or a tool, right? That you kind of collaborate with in order to design something. And it reminds me of Manuel de Landa, the sort of philosopher of architecture, or just philosopher, who talks about, we went from sort of having God minds where we impose our ideas onto paper to sort of collaborators where we collaborate with computers and generate forms and ideas. And, so the forms and ideas have two authors. It's both the computer and the human. And I think that's sort of the future of design and architecture, where you sort of collaborate. Even when we get into AI and machine learning, it's not going to be completely, artificial, because even the very codes and algorithms that make up these AIs and machines are still human. They still come from humans, right? So it's always going to be a sort of collaboration where we design with the help of computers and complex computation. And I wanted to ask you what you think of, in terms of maybe the future of design, when we do get these AIs, machine learning, and different algorithms helping us more and more, do you think designers and architects will become coders more than sort of designers as we are at the moment? So we sort of design the parameters and the algorithms, and we let design sort of emerge on their own. Do you think that's going to be the future of design?
Well, AI and machine learning, they are, at the end of the day, they are still tools. They will speed up the design process, but I think the main challenges will still be there. And it will all depend on how good we are at mastering these AI tools. I would like to give you an example of the movie Matrix. Like you see Neo downloading these kung fu lessons in his brain, but he's not able to master them immediately, right? And it is almost like, he's inside a virtual world and he is kind of connected to an AI. But rather he's trying to establish a connection to an AI by becoming a Neo. So I think, the future of design will be a lot depend on how we master AI.
Right. Absolutely. And maybe to ask a bit of a silly question, do you think we are living in a simulation? Since you brought up Matrix and Neo.
Yeah,
it's possible that we are in a simulation?
Yeah, I know you listen to Joe Rogan a lot. And he's always talking about this, right? Like if we are living in simulation. It is possible, right? And I prefer not to know. Maybe we are, maybe we are not. It doesn't really matter, right?
To know? If someone had the answer, you wouldn't want to know if we were in a simulation?
It doesn't matter, right? Do you think life will be easier if we are not in a simulation? I think the life will be equally difficult whether you are inside simulation or not.
Right. That's true. But just knowing, it's just a sort of curiosity thing, right? It's, humans are curious creatures at the end of the day. It's just fascinating to think that, what we know as reality could actually be just computer codes on someone's software, right?
Correct.
On someone's software.
Yeah, of course, it will be like the biggest secret in the world. I don't know what, but yeah. it's an interesting idea to explore, and I think movies are doing better job than you and I, you and I in exploring that.
Right. And so
Yeah,
another topic we wanted to sort of touch on was Neuralink. And of course, Joe Rogan has also sort of brought Elon Musk onto his show twice, and we've
correct.
spoken about it in some depth. So what are your thoughts on sort of brain-machine interfaces like Neuralink, and how they're going to help us interface
Sorry, your
between
voice is
physical?
breaking. Can you come again?
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was asking, what do you think about brain-machine interfaces like Neuralink, and how will they sort of help us interface between physical and virtual worlds?
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Do you
Yeah,
hear
I can
me,
hear you.
Amey?
Yeah, I can hear you. Faisal?
Yeah, did you hear the question? Did I
No, sorry.
break up again?
Yeah, you break
Okay, so
again.
yeah, I was asking about brain-machine interfaces like Neuralink. I was just
Right.
asking how you think they would help us to interface between physical and virtual worlds.
Yeah, I think Neuralink is, I think, going to be this ultimate VR, right? Because you no longer need this VR gear, and you simply have this chip in the brain, and it might be a lot more convenient than wearing the VR gear. But then this convenience will also come at a price, right? Because it is like a brain operation that you have to insert this chip in your brain. So the success of it will depend a lot on how how people are comfortable accepting these brain implants. But yeah, like the Elon Musk also talks about these neuroprosthetics, right? So which is this basically uh, like artificial limbs that can interpret brain signals and allow superhuman strengths to human. So I think this BMI has a lot of potential, but a lot will depend on how successfully they establish this connection between the brain and the machine.
Right, absolutely. And as Yuval Noah Harari calls the future of this, Homo Deus, or man gods.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what we're trying to become, right? We're trying to sort of have godlike powers on Earth with all this technology, and it's really interesting what the future of humanity will look like. And in terms of sort of Neuralink and augmenting reality, do you think it's possible that in some decades, our perception of reality could become completely augmented? Do you think there's going to be because you talked about sort of the seamless interface that it's going to bring. Do you think there's going to be a time in the future where, our great grandkids, don't know the difference between virtual and real? It's just an augmented reality, and that's what they know their whole lives as.
Yeah, like I think if it becomes a main system, like prevalent system in the world, then yes, I think it will become the major driving force, right? The way we interact with the world through Neuralink. And I also remember like Joe Rogan talking about these enhanced eyes, right? So once you get those eyes, then you're basically you are far superior than the normal people who don't have. So can I get the second part of your question?
No, yeah, that was basically it. How you think sort of that would affect the future of perception. But
Yeah,
in terms of that, how do you think it is going to affect design and architecture then? Having this interface.
I think design and architecture will be the last things to worry about. I think the social implications will be far greater, but I think if people are going to like use Neuralink and spend most of their time in the virtual world, then architecture in the real world will be limited to just having a small room where you are lying down on the bed and you are constantly connected to a virtual world. So maybe architects will have to adapt to designing to the virtual world. And I think we are ill prepared for that. I think the major forces in virtual world are the gaming companies, and I think they will just literally destroy architecture as we know it.
Absolutely. I actually agree with that. And, that's kind of the genesis of Illusorr. That's why, we are the world's first design-oriented virtual platform because, they don't exist out there. Virtual platforms are dominated by the gaming industry, the health industry, aeronautics and whatnot. And,
Yes.
Designers aren't really designing these platforms, even though these are spaces that humans, interact in. We have social interactions in them. They're not designed by designers, by architects, which is quite
Right.
important. So, that's sort of the idea here, to sort of bring designers to the forefront of the virtual world and virtual platforms and, give designers a voice. And, yeah, so...
Sorry, I wanted to add more to that.
Sure.
But that's like the major differentiation between the real world and the virtual world is gravity. In real world we are constantly dealing with gravity, but those rules fall apart in the virtual world. And so anyone can actually design virtual world, right? Because you don't have to worry about the structural forces anymore. So I also kind of like that the design of the virtual world is no longer only in the hands of architect, that it has more, like anyone can design basically, just like how anyone can photograph today using the smartphone. It is no longer only photographer who do it.
Right.
So
can I give a little pushback on that? Because we
Yeah,
had this
please.
conversation earlier as well. So I'll start with the photography and maybe go into the design. For photography, everyone does have access to the technology that allows photography, right? But you wouldn't call everyone a photographer, even though a lot of people are able to take iPhones and take really, good pictures and post them on Instagram. You wouldn't necessarily call them great photographers. The technology is doing most of the work, right? And I think it's the same with architecture. Anyone could essentially design a building. Anyone could take a pencil and a paper and design a square and put some, we've all done it as kids, right? Put some windows and put a gable roof, and you call that a building, but essentially it's not architecture because there is more that goes into it than just that. And I think it's the same with the virtual world as well. Even though gravity isn't, you don't have gravity, you don't have the structural, capabilities or needs within the virtual world. There are other, I think, parameters which are important in these worlds, which is why we sort of have to have these conversations between designers to sort of discover what these parameters are in order to design better virtual worlds.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's you and me who understand those parameters. The larger populace out there, they don't understand or probably also don't care about those parameters. For them, the engaging experience matters. See, when you are inside a video game, you are not appreciating architecture, you are appreciating the story of the game, So I think if there are better storytellers who are creating virtual worlds, they might be a lot more successful than us. I don't think architects will have a say on.
Would you say it's the storytelling, or I'd say the storytelling is a part of it, but maybe the major part of it would be the sort of UX, UI, the sort of, user interface and the experience they have in the game, right?
Yeah, actually that's what I meant, like storytelling and the experience, yes.
Right, and that is design as well. Programmers are essentially designers in a way. They are designing these experiences that people have. They design the same way we would kind of design in terms of navigation. They would design a sort of, a sort of experience that people have. But I guess what could designers or trained designers bring to, the virtual world and designing for the virtual world? What are some of the things that we could sort of contribute to this, that we could add to virtual worlds?
That's a very difficult question to answer because, the virtual world basically does not follow the rules of real world, but we come with the training from the real world. So, yeah, it's very difficult to say what we can exactly contribute because I don't want virtual world simply to be the reflection of the reality, because then it would be a boring place. But I think we will have to work a lot with the gaming companies. Maybe, like to give an example, like maybe gaming companies need to hire more architects, and we need to find this, like how we can integrate architects into designing virtual spaces. I don't think there are many architects working in the gaming companies. So I don't know in exactly what form we architects can contribute. But there is definitely, we need to explore that.
Right, absolutely.
What do you think it would be like? The designs that you have designed and the project that you have designed in the most recent years, since launching of your page on Instagram, what would you feel if you would see in a VR world? Because till experience them in on a let's say non-gravitational field.
Correct.
You were going to check
Your,
like
your voice is breaking.
material. Do you hear me now?
Yes, go on.
Because till now you were designing all these projects inside a 3D environment, which is not a virtual, which is not kind of like personal interacting with your designs in one-on-one. How would you see your perspective would change if you would experience your own design in virtual world?
Oh yeah, it will change a lot. I think right now what I'm struggling with is offering a spatial experience. Right now it's more of a facadism that how the structure looks from outside rather than how do you experience from inside. So I think once, if we, let's say a VR social media, then then the designs will change completely, because then people can actually walk around and experience them how they should be experienced in the real world. So I think yes, it will have a lot of the influence on my design, and I think it will happen soon. I think we will have a social media where you can showcase your VR worlds and people can go and experience them. But I still feel that they might pale in comparison with gaming experiences. That's what I'm afraid of.
And also, do you think there should be kind of like social media platforms, virtual social media platforms, to showcase like designs virtually, not just as image? For example, Instagram of virtual worlds, or Facebook of virtual worlds.
Yeah, there should be, and I think it kind of already exists in some form. So actually, you have this game streaming platform called Steam.
Yes.
So basically, that's a gateway to the virtual worlds. And soon it will start hosting more and more virtual reality games. And I think for architects, if you want to be successful or if you want to be a major force in designing virtual worlds, I think we should be on those platforms as well. Because that is where most of the audience is, or most of the user is. Maybe we need to come up with some architectural applications or architectural games that are available on Steam. I think
that's true.
Yeah.
Amey, what do you think about the game Sims? Because that's one of the first, when I was a kid, kind of the first games I used to play, and it was kind of related to architecture, right? You not only build a family, you also build their house and a little city. So what do you think about a game like that?
Oh, you mean like Age of Empires and like those?
No, The Sims. The Sims.
So can you give me an example of a game?
Yeah, it's called Sims.
Oh, it's called Sims? Oh, sorry, I have not played that.
Oh, okay. Don't worry then. It's a really interesting game where you build houses, you have your family, and it's sort of gamified reality. But yeah, what do you think about the concept of that then as a game, when you kind of can both design and sort of have almost like a simulated reality in a game.
Yeah, and be king of your own world, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that will happen, right? Again, it depends on how easy we make the access to the technology of designing, VR world. And as Hamid was mentioning, like if we have this social media where we have VR, then I think everybody will participate in that. Everybody will create their own world, as you mentioned that. They will create their maybe own house to start with, but maybe it will expand into a lot bigger something, and we will have them on the social medias where you have these top trending worlds and people can go in, experience them, come out, or you share them with other people. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting idea.
That's amazing. Do we have any questions from the audience? If anybody wants to ask anything from Amey, you can just approach to the stage or write us on Discord. I think there's no questions from audience, so we can continue with the conversation.
Yeah. So a lot of the conversations, these panels and these talks have been about how we optimize virtual cities, and I asked this earlier in a talk about sort of big data and how that will affect designing in the virtual world. So the same way you have social media and streaming platforms and advertisement on the internet that are all kind of curated by algorithms which almost know us better than we know ourselves, right? They kind of understand our characteristics better than we do. Do you
Yeah.
think that's going to start to play a part within design, especially in the virtual world, where you have big data that's sort of collected about our engagement within virtual worlds, and then it starts to almost simulate and design worlds that we would like and we would
Yeah.
appreciate more than a designer could? Do you think that would become not a problem, but maybe a potential design
Outcome.
outcome? Exactly.
Yeah, I think yes, because yeah, it's what you're saying is correct, that it's easy to draw the parallel between the two, that's how the social media companies or today's tech giants have become powerful, or have become successful, following that model that you feed people something that they want and you feed them more of it. It may happen in VR world as well. See, again, VR opens up so many possibilities. It's difficult to predict right now what's exactly going to happen. Just like 15 years ago, nobody knew what impact social media would have in the society. And today, US government is investigating Facebook, So I think we need to learn from these mistakes that social media companies are doing, that how we design virtual worlds better, maybe not follow the same techniques that they followed, maybe we explore some other ways in which we are not creating harmful impacts, through our work. And because nobody would like virtual space to be regulated by government, right? So I think people would like their freedom, like they would like to experience their freedom in virtual spaces. And I think, yeah, what you said can be done. Like, we can follow the social media companies, but that may lead to wrong outcomes.
Right, absolutely. And speaking of these big data and algorithms, AI is going to play a big part in architecture, and I usually have these conversations with friends about whether AIs could replace architects, whether that's actually possible. Because essentially, like when it comes to AIs and algorithms, all it is breaking down things to rules and then replicating those rules. But when it comes to architecture, there's something about architecture that cannot be completely broken down as rules. it's not like, biology or physics where you can break everything down to rules. Architecture has this kind of, I don't know, maybe randomness or I don't know, creativity. There's this parameter about it that you can't break down into rules that can be given to a computer. So
Correct.
do you think do you think AIs would ever replace architects? And if not, like, what do you think that sort of extra parameter is that cannot be replicated?
Again, these are like very, very speculative questions and with many, many answers, how do I answer this? So, like, let me first talk about how architecture is practiced in today's real world. I think architects are already playing a very small role in real world. I think majority of the construction is done by contractors. They design those buildings by themselves, and architects probably design 4 to 5% maybe, of the buildings that are constructed today. And I think that may continue in virtual world, that the contractors will be replaced by gaming companies who are doing the majority of the work, and in futures AI will replace gaming companies in designing those virtual worlds. But yeah, like creativity is an aspect that is, if it is still with humans, then yes, architects might have a role to play, because actually that's the definition of AI, right? If it can be creative, then it doesn't need humans. But if it is not creative, then it is dependent on humans. So we don't know the future. I hope the creativity part will still be with architects, and people will still hire architects to design their virtual house or virtual beach house or whatever. I think movie Inception does a great job in showing that that to design these dream worlds, it's kind of a different form of virtual reality, that Cobb has to hire an architect who can design this space for virtual world, and everyone can share that space. So and in that also they show some like these infinite possibilities, and they talk about those infinite possibilities, right? That they are bending the world, and like how they show the Paris falling over Paris, so I think I hope humans will be able to do those awesome things in future, and not AI.
Right, absolutely. And speaking about sort of cities like Inception, we had a panel discussion earlier about virtual cities, and you said you kind of tuned into that. So I wanted to get
Yes,
your
I did.
perspective about what you think of virtual cities and how we can design for them.
Yeah. I think we have already answered that in some way, but yeah, let's go at it again. I think the democratization of design process is very important here. I think, as we said earlier, like everyone should have access to designing their own virtual space, and again, that's going to open these infinite possibilities of design. So it's very difficult to say how our future city is going to look like, but I liked some of the conversations that that were being discussed on the panel earlier. I liked how they talked about that when it comes to the matter of survival. I think Hamid was talking about how people are driving cars by looking at their phones. And if VR comes to a point of it becomes a matter of survival, then there is going to be a lot of restriction on it. And again, going back to the movie Inception, the cop's wife, she kills herself because she can no longer distinguish between reality and simulation. And if the future is going to be like that, then there may be a lot of criticism on virtual world, and maybe there will be a lot of restrictions placed on, or there will be a lot of guidelines on how we design the virtual world, so that they do not have adverse psychological effects on human beings or people who experience the VR world. So yeah, it's a very, very complex issue to discuss how the future VR cities are going to look like.
Right. That's actually
Amazing.
interesting. I completely forgot about that part of the movie.
Yeah,
Of,
yeah,
Inception.
it's very interesting. Even I thought about it yesterday that Mall kills herself, so commits a suicide because she keeps thinking that she is in a simulation and she has to escape that to go be with her kids. And imagine people starting killing themselves in future because they cannot handle the simulation anymore. So that may happen.
Yeah, interesting. Exactly. Good point.
Yeah.
Thank you. To ask if audience have any questions from Amey. Other than that, if Faisal, you don't have anything to ask, I will just continue with my last question to Amey.
Yes.
And I just wanted, yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, I had a follow-up question on that because, speaking about sort of not being able to tell the difference between reality and virtual, I think that's that is potentially a problem in the future, and to some extent even now as well, because there are a lot of mentally ill people who cannot tell the difference between reality and what's not reality, and
Yes.
I feel like uh, I don't know. I feel like it seems like a problem now, but there might be a time in the future where even a normal person sees reality and extended reality as one, because essentially there is no real difference. Right now, I feel like the difference right now, there's a distinction because of the way that we interface with it, right? Because
Yes.
right now we have to get on a computer on a 2D screen to interface with it, or we have to wear sort of head-mounted devices like VR headsets or whatnot to interface with it. But when it becomes part of our biology with these neural and chips, they might become so seamless that there is no actual difference between extended realities and physical reality. So, this demarcation line might not exist anymore.
Correct.
I guess that's an interesting, future that we might be in.
Yeah, and it might happen that if there are adverse effects because our brains cannot handle this, then we like the governments might be forced to step in, and then okay, we have this common one regulated VR world that everybody has to share. It may happen where then, like for example, you need a license to drive your car and you have to undergo tests, so people might have to undergo medical tests or some kind of test to be able to access VR because there is a potential for harm. So yeah, like again, like there are infinite possibilities and infinite outcomes, and it's very difficult to predict exactly what would happen.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that actually just reminded me of another question about, you were talking about virtual cities earlier and whether we would all kind of see the same city, right? Do you think it's possible where you have, let's say you have a city, let's say you have a physical city, right? And, you have buildings which have completely sort of clear facades, and each person's perception of those facades is different, right? So you all see the city in a different way based on your sort of preferences, and the algorithm calculates what exactly you would like to see, what
Yes.
adverts, what colors, and everything. So do you see that as a possibility where you each have a different perspective on reality that's augmented?
Yes, actually, interesting that you mentioned that Google Maps is already working on this. So, if you hold your phone and walk on the street and open Google Maps app, it will show you the things that you want to see. And a person next to you may be seeing different things, So, I think that is going to happen definitely. And Google Maps are already experimenting with those things. There are trials going on. I was looking at some video on YouTube that they are like, okay, you just hold your smartphone in front of you, walk, and you can actually see that your favorite places while you're walking, with like a form of augmented reality. So yeah, like this user refined experience, right? Or user targeted experience. Yes, and that's definitely going to happen.
Right, right. I definitely see that as sort of an interesting future that would live in. Which again,
Yeah.
it's sort of it's almost it's it's related to this experience because you do have things like color blindness and other impairness that sort of makes us see the world differently. So I guess that's going to be a more curated one that allows us to see the
Yes.
world as we'd like to see the world, or as
Yes.
might benefit us in some way, which us
And
designers
also,
might
you
have
might
to.
be able to apply avatars. You might be able to apply avatars as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah. So, Hamid, did you have another question you wanted to ask, or should we carry on?
Yeah, yeah, we can carry on if the conversation goes on. It's okay for me. The last question I was going to ask: what kind of advice would you like to share with your friends, designers, other young architects who are chasing a dream like you?
Uh, yeah, I think the path I took was quite unusual, and there is kind of no guarantee of success. So I think I will pursue young designers to try out multiple paths at the same time. It's hard that you have your curriculum, of course, and you follow that, and you have your main architecture job. You do that, but on the side, you should have another architectural hobby. Because for me, my Instagram page was a hobby, and then it became serious over time. So yeah, like I will advise people to pursue hobbies that they are passionate about, and with an aim that they will become more serious in future. uh, Again, mastering your skills, people should definitely keep working on the software skills. If they are interested in exploring VR design, then Adobe has a software called Medium. I think I encourage people to look into that also. I think there is this Instagram page by Christian Venables. He does a lot of great design using Adobe Medium. So I will encourage users to go and look at that. So if you have interest in VR, they should consider those tools.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Hello.
Hello, do you hear me? What's the name of you mentioned?
So the name of the design software is Adobe Medium. So
Adobe
basically,
Medium, okay.
yeah. So basically, you wear VR goggles and you are designing inside the VR space, and
Yeah.
you can model directly inside. And there is this architect named, I don't know actually he's an architect or an artist, but his name is Christian Venables, and he has an Instagram page named CSA Venables.
Okay, I got
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, so I will encourage people to go and look at his work. He has done some cool VR modeling work.
Yes, amazing. Love it. Thanks, Amey. Thanks for your time and thanks for joining to Illusorr. I really enjoyed your talk. It was so inspiring.
Thank you, Hamid.
And you're welcome. And I think we can end the conversation here, Faisal, right?
Yes, yes, sure. Thank you,
Okay.
Emily. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Faisal.
Appreciate your time, and we hope to see you soon again in Illusorr in Pilot for another talk again.